All right, our first day of quadratic equations is going to be involving solving a quadratic equation with no linear term, and then solving a quadratic equation as a quadratic trinomial using the quadratic formula. You will have seen both of these in Algebra 2 last year and Algebra 1 the year before, but it's good to refresh your memory after such a large gap in time. So, first thing, just to make sure that we understand some terminology here, if I'm looking at a quadratic equation structure, something x squared plus something x plus something equals 0. This is called standard form. Standard form of a quadratic equation starts off with a quadratic term, which is an x squared term. It's followed by a linear term, which is an x to the first power term, followed by a constant, which is no x at all, and it should be equals 0. All right, so that's standard form of a quadratic. As a general rule, when you're dealing with quadratic equations, that's the best place to be for a quadratic equation, always standard form. I'd even venture to arrange it so that a is positive. I like my squared term to be positive if I can help it at all. So with all that in mind, looking at this, you'll notice 9x squared is quadratic, 25 is a constant, and there is no x to the first power. So again, there's no linear term here. And the best process to solve a problem with no linear term is to find x squared first. So step 1, find x squared. Step 2, square root both sides. And I'm going to put in parentheses here, I'm going to put plus or minus. You want to make sure there's a plus or minus in front of your number. So I'll demonstrate what this looks like. So it's a quick two-step process. You want standard form. So again, if it starts off like this, great. If not, create standard form out of it. So the quadratic term followed by the constant equals 0. So if I've got 9x squared minus 25 equals 0. So again, if this is my paper, this is what my paper is going to look like right here. Step 1, write the problem down in standard form out of your book. Step 2, find x squared. That's a two-step process here. I'm going to get 9x squared equals 25 by moving the negative 25 over to the right-hand side. The sign changes to positive. Step 2, to find x squared, divide both sides by 9. So x squared is equal to 25 over 9. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to do. Find x squared. And again, that's at most 2 steps. Move the constant to the other side, change the sign, divide by the coefficient if there is one. All right. If there's no coefficient, you're already at that point at that moment. So, second thing to do, square root both sides. You're going to have a quadratic x squared object here. The square root of x squared is x. To square root a fraction, you simply square root the top number, square root the bottom number. So the square root of 25 on top is 5. The square root of 9 on the bottom is 3. But when you square root things, you must get a positive or negative square root. So very important when you're doing this no linear term process. Again, this doesn't exist. X squared first, square root both sides, put a plus or minus in front of the number. Because negative times negative 5/3 will make positive 25/9. Positive times positive 5/3 make positive 25/9. Either a negative or positive number here squared is going to make this positive value. So make sure that you put the plus or minus to get both answers to that question. Okay, and go ahead and leave it as a fraction. I'd rather have fractions than decimals. Improper fractions are fine. It should be that much work every single time. Write the problem down, solve for x squared, square root both sides, put the plus or minus.